Good afternoon and welcome to the Virtual Roadshow. Thank you very much for joining me, and a massive thank you to you, Doug Miller, for including me on the Virtual Roadshow app. So, artificial intelligence becomes actual intelligence. Let's hope so. Today, I am going to be building better experiences from the inside out. And what that means is we're going to look into what makes up an experience and how can we improve on that experience from the inside. So to start with, I thought it might be quite good if we begin with a nice feeling. So that nice feeling, in the UK, the wellbeing industry is worth over £11.2 billion, and that incidentally is more than we spent on the NHS last year. It's booming. That's bang. All right, we're doing really well. But before we get too excited, some of those figures did come from yoga retreats and the sales of vitamins. So you need to check those figures, whether it's applicable to you and your gym. And before we get too excited, 40% of adults in the US still don't get the bare minimum of exercise that's recommended by the NHS or the WHO, the World Health Organization. So that means that we're doing really well at getting a small percentage of people that come into our facilities moving and being inspired. But there are a lot of people out there that are still not even coming into our facilities. So maybe, hopefully, some of these strategies you can take away to your team and they might use it to come up with some amazing ideas to help get more of that vast bit of pie. So if we're in the wellbeing industry, our product is not a tangible product. It's not actually like the dumbbell that you can just pick up and feel, unless of course you're in manufacturing kit. Or if you've got a clothing part of your company where you sell lycra. But other than that, it's not tangible. So your clients will really value your product and judge your product on how you made them feel. How you made them feel anticipating coming into your facility. Also, how they felt when they walked through the doors. What was the temperature like? What were the smells like? What were their first interactions like and who were they with? Was it with a member of team at the reception desk, a member of a maintenance team? Or was it in fact another member, another client? Or perhaps it's a group exercise instructor, personal trainer. But all of those feelings they get within your facility, they take away with them. And that's the experience. That's the one they judge you on. And I actually think the hardest job, probably the personal trainer, because the personal trainer has to create a movement experience. Of course, they have to have great communication skills. They need to be able to listen. They need to be able to know what it is the client wants to achieve, what their movement goal is, and know the right rep, set, volume, load to be able to make sure they get that adaptation. But we're talking deeper than this. We're talking they need to be able to match the right feeling at the right time in that session, because if they don't, if they get it wrong, they're going to be judged on the way they felt, the way that person felt when they left. So that means knowing what strong means to each unique and individual client. It means knowing whether they like lifting heavy weights or whether they're someone that prefers free weights. It's about knowing how someone likes to feel, matching the right energy systems. Now, if you're training my daughter, she's a monster. She's an ex-rower. And so she likes lactate system, hard and fast. Yeah, she's a hit girl. And if she doesn't get that, she's not coming back. But my son, creatine phosphate, he wants to make sure that it's hard, but he doesn't feel it there and then in the session, feels it 2 or 3 days later. So they've got to match the right energy systems. They've also got to match the right biomechanics to the exercise so that you get the right adaptation and the right feeling 2 days later. The client that wakes up going, I can't walk down the stairs because my butt is on fire, they might be going, yes, that's exactly what I want, my daughter. However, if you do the very same thing to my mum, she is never coming back, because what she will feel is this feeling of pain around her bum that she will think is sciatica. Even if it is DOMS, she won't associate that feeling with something positive like my daughter. She will associate that feeling with something negative. So actually, this talk is not just about the experience. It's actually about the lens of the experience, the expectation we have of this experience. Because our environment, our past experiences, all have a play in how something feels. So let's just take a moment to look at, in its entirety, what is an experience. It's where I get to be a little bit nerdy. I'll try not to be too nerdy. But experience is a group of feelings that you can get from any place in the gym, any part of your session. Those feelings come from an action that's been taken from an emotion. And the emotion, which is that chemical reaction, the muscle contraction, well, that comes from a trigger. The trigger, that comes from information that has crossed a threshold because it's important enough. So if my mum felt sciatica or this bottom feeling, that would have been a trigger. So if you take a moment to think about, if we take a moment to think about around us, we've constantly got feedback, whether something is too hot, too cold, whether something is noisy, not noisy enough, whether we've got a shoe that's on too tightly. All of these things are being fed back to us the whole time. But when something becomes important enough, that's when we get this trigger, that emotion and chemical reaction. And from that point, that is an emotion. And it emotes us to move, whether that's an opportunity to move towards a tasty piece of cake or someone who looks rather attractive, or whether it is danger, freeze, fight, or flight, and we need to get out of there. But the action we take comes from the decision in the brain, the central nervous system. And what the brain does really well is it recognizes patterns, memories, old experiences. So like the Matrix, it goes through this whole checkpoint, this whole system of, has this ever happened before? If it was my mum, did you ever have bottom pain before? Yes, it was sciatica. Oh, that was horrendous. And your doctor said this. All of those things go into play. And then the action that you take, oh, I better make sure that I don't move again for a while. That's going to be the feeling that reinforces how you feel. And then a group of feelings become the actual experience. So what we ultimately want to do is we want to make sure that we are reinforcing positive feelings that create this experience that somebody wants to repeat. So what I'm really getting to is we can kind of manipulate an experience when we start to think about these emotions and what things happen within them. The other thing is, not all feelings have to be good. Sometimes if anybody's a parent, you'll know that parenting is not always easy. But the challenges that you have make the good times even better. Now, if you could put that into a shorter scenario, maybe you go to the gym and it's a little bit tough at the beginning, but then your trainer gives you some new exercises and you experience it in a different way. Then you go back to the old exercise and you've got a PB. Well, now we've got a different experience, but that has been created by thinking about what you want that person to go through at a different time. When you go into a restaurant, all of those things are being considered. What's the service like? What does the food taste like? What are the smells like in the restaurant? And the thing that's going to make it an absolute winner is the service. Being made to feel special and valued within that experience. So I highly recommend treat yourself, put it down to expenses, to go and have a nice, really special meal or go to a really lovely hotel and think about what feelings you have and how they become part of that experience. Now, if you're in a really bad mood and you go to a restaurant, you might notice different things than you would have done because the mood will influence how we experience something. And being aware of the whole environment influences the experience is really important. Past memories. So what I'm really saying is we've got to try and get an understanding of the lens that somebody else is looking in through in order to be able to manage the expectation. So what I propose today is, although this is about building better experiences, maybe it's a little bit more about managing expectations better. We want to make sure that we don't overpromise and then underdeliver. About 26 years ago, my husband and I went to New Zealand and we hired a camper van and we drove around for a month. And by the end of the month, we got to Auckland and I was desperate for some luxury. So we booked in to the Sheraton Hotel. And it was amazing. I had this lovely hot shower and got out of the shower, and it had one of those mirrors that didn't steam up. Marvelous. And I put my beautiful robe on and we're drinking champagne and you've got the smells of a spa going around. Lovely. And then suddenly I get this itch at the back of my neck. I'm like, what's that? What's that? Anyway, I just thought it was like a little insect. And then a bit itchy again. And then I moved my pillow and behind it was a team of bed bugs. I was like, this is disgusting. And can you imagine? They were horrified. They were absolutely horrified. They're very sweet and they're trying to catch these bed bugs in a jam jar. But there was nothing they could do to make me get over the fact that that is not what I paid my money for. That was not acceptable. I'm a bit of a prima donna. I'm a mum of two, and that's my husband, Duncan. And I've not always been in the fitness industry. In fact, I got into the fitness industry about 33 years ago. And initially, it was a side hustle. Well, really, it was to pay the bills because I was a jobbing actress and not making enough money. So I started off in reception. And very, very quickly, I was like, oh, I quite like the idea of that studio. I'd like to get in there and teach some classes. And luckily, I had a manageress that was lovely, Sarah Dove, and she paid for me to go and do a group exercise course, exercise to music, YMCA. And I absolutely loved it. But what I realised was that some of the people that were coming to the class, they had special requirements and I wanted to be able to give them a more bespoke experience. And I knew that I needed to go and do my personal training and I wanted to know the science behind why you gave someone an exercise at a certain time. But what I really appreciate was how Sarah noticed that I was actually bored of being on reception. And she wasn't judgmental over that. She just gave me the opportunity to move around the company and then allowed me to take on a managerial role as well. So I really thank her for that. But before that, I danced very badly and I got into being an actress. And the reason I mention this is because sorry, if you can hear something, my dog is barking like crazy now. That's not the trigger I wanted. What acting taught me was when you're delivering and when you're performing up there, you can't guarantee what feeling someone's had. You don't know whether they've had a bad day. You don't know what mood they're coming in to the premises in. But what you do know is the whole group feel it together. I can't specify what feeling they get, but they are moved by that emotion. And you can feel when someone's emotionally upset because of a breakup within the story, or it all just goes so quiet you can hear a pin drop. Or I get the opportunity to pretend to beat up my best friend. That was great fun. Then the other thing I did was comedy, stand-up comedy. This was my first set in Berlin and it was brutal. I'm not very good, so please don't expect any comedy here today. But it did remind me that it is a two-way thing and we get to learn and adapt. And if the experience isn't going the way we want it, we can change. Luckily, I've now got over the fact that Lola was barking away. Apologies for that. But now let's see how we can bring this all back to our team, because that's where I want to focus today. I think a lot of us think about the client experience, and a lot of us do think about the team's experience. But I was saddened by a recent report from Gallup. Apparently, only 11% of people in the UK are engaged in their workplace. That's dreadful. That's really disappointing. And if you think, from qualifying as a personal trainer, most personal trainers leave within 18 months. So just maybe, although this isn't just our industry, maybe there are certain things that we can do to improve that experience. Something that's been really useful for me with the gyms that I've worked with and the teams that I've worked with is going through this little acronym. And I believe it comes from Google, but I'm sure it comes from somewhere else as well. But happy, start with happy, because I think most people come to work, they do want to be happy. They might be having other stuff going on at home, but they want to be happy. But we need to have an understanding of what their expectation is in order to be happy, so that we can at least deliver that. What keeps them engaged? Now, I was lucky. Sarah Dove noticed when I was a bit disengaged as a receptionist, and she knew I needed a little bit more. And she gave me those right tools. So what she did was she adapted really well to my needs. And I think things like that, offering someone a training course, or maybe it's giving them autonomy over a decision, or giving them the opportunity to bring new ideas into how we create experiences for our clients. Those types of things will help keep people retained within your business. And the brilliant thing about that, if you keep your team, you keep that culture. And obviously the opposite from that is they leave, which means you have to fork out for recruitment. And that's not cheap, let me tell you. The other thing that we can do, which is super, super easy, is be really crystal clear on what tasks are expected and what success in those tasks look like. Because I think if people feel like they are doing well, they feel happier too. But if they don't know what the benchmark is, then it's hard for them to deliver up to your standards. And if we do get this wrong and we don't listen, it could be costly. Not only on the recruitment, as I mentioned, but also because if your team aren't happy, if they're not engaged, then this is going to show in the experience they deliver, which means your clients aren't going to get the best experience, which means you're taking away the opportunity for repeat business, referrals, and yet again, experience. And that's the last thing that we want. A while ago, there was a research study done by a group of neuroscientists. And what they did was they took some monkeys and they gave them some sweet apple juice. And what they did is they tested the activity of their brain when they had this apple juice. And as you can imagine, when they had the apple juice, they saw the brain light up dopamine. But what was interesting to me about this piece of research was that prior to giving the apple juice, they put on a red light. Now, the first few times, the dopamine appeared as they drank the juice. But then what was interesting is what started to happen is as they tested the brain, the dopamine started to appear as the red light came on, which means that the central nervous system, the brain, had learnt from the anticipation of this reward, the sweet apple juice. So it was actually getting the dopamine earlier. And then what's interesting, or a little bit nasty, I think, is they switched the apple juice for water. So when the monkeys got the light, dopamine fired, got the what? So they didn't want water after sweet apple juice. And this was a prediction error. And this is why it's so important that we think about what are the things that people expect. What do our team expect from us? What do we offer them currently? Because what starts to happen is the things that they expect now, if they drop, they're going to get a predictive error, and that's going to influence happiness, engagement. It's going to influence whether they stay in your facility. So there's things that we can do to stop that happening. We've got our HEART acronym. We can use that. But I want you to hold on for that for a minute. And the next one is the 3-tier of expectation. What we do here is we talk about the unsaid expectation. In the case of the monkeys, the unsaid expectation was sweet apple juice, and there's all hell let loose if they don't get that. That dopamine didn't fire, they were disappointed. And we don't want disappointed monkeys. So now, the next stage of that circle is what are the spoken expectations? And here I say, well, this is pretty much the easiest part of it, okay, because it's what we're communicating. And then the next bit, the one that I get excited about, that is the going above and beyond, because we can be creative. So let's have a little look at what this looks like within our industry, and then we're going to bring it back to your team. So first of all, unsaid expectations. Well, in the 1980s, I don't think the expectations were too high within the fitness industry. We expected somewhere that you could lift weights, and there might be someone who was experienced that could help you out, and there might be an area where you could dance about, do your aerobics in your leotard. There might be some music on in the background. Then in the 2000s, this has stepped up a gear. Now we have an expectation of having some equipment in an area to lift weights and maybe some free weights as well. And we expect an area to be able to go and do a fitness class. These would be unsaid expectations. And we would also have an unsaid expectation that you'll have a member of your team that can show us what to do. Today, these unsaid expectations have risen. Now we expect to have an area where women can feel really comfortable lifting big weights, strength training. It also needs to be inclusive. We need to know that we've got a place that we can take a selfie. We need to know that we've got a studio, maybe that is for yoga or Pilates. And definitely an unsaid expectation is that our wearables can interlink with all of your technology. That's not above and beyond. That is an expectation now. We want to make sure that those wearables, those whoops can plug in. So what we've done there is we've had a quick look at some of those unsaid expectations. Smoking outside. Oof. I do remember the first gym that I was a manager of, New Bodies, and the owner used to swipe people through the door at the reception, which doubled as the bar, whilst smoking. That never really sat well with me, I've got to be honest. So your first challenge is to either pause me or write down very quickly 3 things that your team have never asked you for but expect from you. It might be that they have a safe place to work in, a clean place to work in, and they get paid. But I hope that they probably do talk to you about what those expectations of pay are. Now let's flip that switch and let's find out 3 things that you expect of your team but have never actually verbalized. Come in on time, clean, as in they are clean and smell nice. From here, we're moving on to our spoken expectations. So in 1980s, I think you might ask for someone who is qualified, or maybe not even qualified, just experienced, to show you around. And they would have been the biggest person in the gym, big baggy pants, like MC Hammer. You might have expected to ask for specific pieces of kit, like, oh, do you have the new Nautilus kit that you can use, or maybe the adductor machine, or an ab cruncher, and you may have asked for a studio timetable. Now 2000s, so I get all nostalgic about this. The things that people might have asked for then was if you had a jacuzzi or sunbeds or a swimming pool. They would have asked if it was inclusive, if you had any speciality classes, if you could write a program, so do an assessment, functional training, and an area for stretching. Today, the expectations that people ask for are a free weights area, strength training area, an area for recovery, a place to go and do yoga or Pilates, and special pieces of kit that might be relevant to a particular competition, like high rocks. So these are the spoken expectations that we've been through those years. So you guessed it. Your next challenge is to pause me and take a moment and write down 3 things that your team has asked you for, expectations from you. And then write down 3 things that you've asked of them. Now, hopefully this matches and you're both delivering on both sides of that coin, because this is, after all, the easiest part. You've spoken about it, you've communicated, and anything lower than this will be giving a prediction error. So now we get to the fun part, the above and beyond. And I don't think that this can be underemphasized. This is the area that makes a difference. So it's really where you're thinking service. 1980s, above and beyond, if the club is inclusive. I think it was the the City Gym in Australia? They were really good at getting this right back in the 1980s. I think if you had a fluffy towel, that was above and beyond expectation. If you had decent fans, that was above and beyond expectation. I don't know about a pool. 2000, this is the nostalgic period for me because this was fun. I loved working in cannons at this time. It was definitely work hard, play hard. We used to have so many different events on whenever there was a new release of the Les Mills choreographed programs. We would have big launch parties. We'd have salsa nights, and they were full. We had members and we had our teams turning up. I remember going to Ascot for the races, water skiing. Another club that stands out in mind is from New York, stories of a David Barton gym where they would have big club nights. Again, really, really popular. Things like your spin studio start to get popular, bringing in the bass. Today, we're going above and beyond today. This is a bit where we can all sit down and think and bring ideas to the table. This is definitely where we can give a bit of autonomy to our team and go, come on, what have you got for me? Gen Z, they're really, really keen on looking after their mental health, flexible hours, those types of things. They're really interested in ethics, things that are environmentally friendly, those types of things. There might be some areas you can go into there. I think going above and beyond is creating teams that combine your work team and your clients to work together on something like a high rocks or a white collar boxing fight. Maybe it's also having the facility to be able to deliver an experience inside on the premises, online, and also outdoors as well. But I think here we have to work hard at building that service and communication with our teams here. People do come in with their headphones on these days, and they've got a lot of their apps that they'll just start using in order to do their own workout. So thinking about ways in which you can go above and beyond. Maybe it's creating a talk, or maybe it's going back to the heyday of the 2000s before the 2007 plop, and going back to some of those ideas. So above and beyond expectation through the age, so that leaves us to our challenge here. Write down 3 things that you think your team would consider you delivering above and beyond expectation. 3 things that they would consider you were delivering above and beyond expectation. Maybe it's a handwritten thank you note. Maybe it's an intrinsic kind of reward where people are told how great somebody did, that type of thing in a meeting. Or maybe it's something like, trying to think of something else here, but it's really about making them feel valued. And I'm sure you've got far better ones written down now. But now what I want you to do is reverse that. And I want you to think of 3 things that you consider your team that have done things above and beyond expectation for you. Whether it's with you've had a crisis and they've just come to your rescue, or come in at the last minute when you've got a member of the team sick, that type of stuff. Once you've done that, we're going to move on. But what we've got here is a little picture of a few things that you can do, and you can put this into your club and do it every 2 weeks or every month. I would say a bare minimum every quarter. And each time you can go deeper into these parts. Now, all we did was basically look at those unsaid expectations, spoken expectations, and then the above and beyond. But if you take that a little bit further and add happiness to it with our HEART acronym and think happiness, what are the unsaid things? What are the said things? What's above and beyond? Then look at engagement, unsaid, said, above and beyond. Our adaptation, and follow that process through. Retention, what are things that we can do? Unsaid, said, and above and beyond. So these expectations, as we've seen, evolve. So what started off as being above and beyond in the 80s, in the 2000 was a said expectation, and then now they're just predicted. They're an unsaid expectation, which is why we need to keep coming back to this process. 1.8 billion adults are still not getting enough exercise. And so every time we think, oh, but there's no more that we can do, or there's no more clients out there. Yes, there are. And so if we can find new ways of inspiring new people in, it's really, really worth it. So I suggest you give that as a task to your team. Give them the autonomy to come up with some new ways, some new ideas that may bring people that don't already exercise and move in clubs to your facilities. The best way of thinking about how we can deliver above and beyond, I think, is to beg, borrow, and steal from other industries. Hospitality normally is very good, apart from the Sheraton in Auckland. The Ritz-Carlton has been renowned not just for the experience it delivers to its clients, but the experience it delivers to its team. And the things that people like about it was the way they felt valued and supported, the ability to be able to move from one area to the next. So just because you were a doorman didn't mean you had to stay a doorman for the rest of your life. You could move around and progress. John Lewis, this is obviously more of a retail industry, but what they did is they gave their team opportunities to buy shares in the company. Then they've got skin in the game. They've got something to lose if it doesn't work out. So that's a great way of building that culture, but also it meant that they also gave their shareholders autonomy in new ideas. Today, Google is obviously one that springs to mind for many, many people. I love the fact that they have Bring the Dog to Work Day. Also, sleep pods too. Breakout rooms so you can play table tennis. And again, it's got a great growth mindset culture. So people can bring ideas in, but they don't feel like they're going to be reprimanded if it's no good or something fails. They're like, meh, it's fine. Let's try it out. If it fails fast, we learn from it. We move on. It's great. So they make their team feel really welcome and valued. Now, the other one that I thought really ties into Gen Z is Patagonia, because Patagonia is a clothing company like no other. They're not just there for the trends. It's not just a throwaway society. It's all ethical, recyclable, environmentally friendly. So they encourage activism. But what they also do is they make sure that they find out what things that you are passionate about as part of the team, what areas that you would like to go and make a stand for, and they support that. So that's very popular. I don't know, maybe it's something that you can take away. One of the things I learned from was my dad. My dad had a sewing machine shop. He sold sewing machines. Go figure, in a sewing machine shop, never. Not the most exciting, sexy product. But when he was kicked out of his home at 14, he set it upon himself to get and create a successful business, one that earned more money than it spent. By the age of 21, he now had 22 shops across the Midlands. And by all sense of purposes, a bit of a Jack the Lad driving around in an E-Type. But that could have put his team off. And it could have meant that the culture within the sewing machine shop didn't work. But luckily, Dad had already decided that the essence of his business was going to be around making people feel cared for and listened to. But he knew that that wouldn't work if he was literally just selling a product. Unsaid expectation, sew machine, sews your clothes or helps you make clothes. There we go. That's it. Sits on the side and gathers dust. But what he did was he got his team together and said, right, how can we make this an experience? And what they came up with was inviting people that had bought machines back in to show off the clothes that they had made. And this was the start of a cheese and wine fashion show evening. And what was brilliant about it, that Dad was really surprised about, was that those people that had bought sewing machines started to talk to other people. They had different sewing machines, and people then upgraded their machines. So it meant that they got more sales. Then one of the team members said, I've got an idea. Why don't we go to the 40 Thieves nightclub, which is just down the road, and we could do a fashion show there. And that's exactly what they did. And that was really, really popular and something that no one had thought of doing with a sew machine shop. And to say thank you, he took them all down to Poole, piled them on his little boat, and they went and had an adventure. And boy, that would have been an adventure, because this boat, called the Trial and Error, was only small, and it turns out my dad didn't even have a license, because you didn't need them back then. But worse still, he couldn't even swim. But the point of the story is obviously not the swimming or the qualification there. It was the fact that he took a product and went laterally and thought, how can I make this an experience? And he kept his team at the heart of everything that he was doing. So everything that we've done so far can clearly help manage expectations from your team and help you to deliver above and beyond. And also equally help them to understand what you expect of them and create a culture where they want to go above and beyond. And all of that is going to filter out to your clients. Your personal trainers, your team are the first point of call in that connection. But this can also go a little bit further. This can go further out to your other stakeholders. So thinking about not just your clients, but friends and family of your clients. Also the businesses that they might use, so that this process of the 3 tiers, you can find out ways in which you can reach those businesses. Again, with your team, how do you reach their friends and family? How do you reach where the friends and family, the businesses they're going to? So it's putting this creative process together step by step. A lot of this can be done using technology. And some of that's really, really useful, particularly if you want to get some feedback or information without giving any identity to it. So that can be really, really useful. And I'm already assuming that you've got technology that, really keeps track of your clients' touch points and watches when they drop off. But I do hope that this has reminded you that you're doing a great job of keeping that face-to-face interaction going, because I really believe that that's what makes the connection. And if we lose that, we're going to slip away, and that's when we go back into the Gallup disappointing report. Misaligned roles, that really shouldn't be happening, because if we're checking in with our team, we should know if they're losing interest. Sarah noticed straight away with me, it doesn't take much. Disconnection with culture. We need to know if our team is majority Gen Z, can we make sure that we're all on the same page? What can we do to support that culture? No growth opportunities. Again, this just comes from communication, knowing. So many personal trainers go into management roles, and yet they've had no actual training, no leadership training, no communication skills training. They don't know how to do this well. And then they may not be listening or giving value to the team. And this all starts to knock on with each other, ruining the culture from within. unclear expectations. And this is just a shame, because this is just a clear conversation. What are the expectations that both of you have of each other? That's 20%. It's still quite a lot. Poor management relationships. And hopefully, if you do see that someone is looking to progress from being a personal trainer, become a manager, that you get involved, you adapt, you give them the right training, because otherwise they might be that poor manager. The manager that doesn't notice the star personal trainer that has started to become a little bit more withdrawn, the one that is really beginning to struggle. They're burnt out. The one that doesn't seem to be quite as focused as they used to be. This is Sarah. It's not the real Sarah, but Sarah worked for a big gym chain in the US, and she was training 42 clients, and she was here. She just could not do anymore. She absolutely loved her job. She loved every single one of her clients. She wasn't on a great wage, but she was one of these trainers that was loyal. She was going above and beyond. She would spend her money on her own education. She would go off to different conferences to make sure that she was up to date. But she was struggling. She'd go home. She was crying. She would forget things. She wouldn't eat properly. Her skin was breaking out. She was getting colds. And she said nobody noticed. And it was at this point that she realized, although her clients were so special to her, she didn't feel valued by her managing team. And she didn't know how to tell them that she was at this point. She probably didn't even really understand that she was at that point of burnout. But she did pluck up the courage to go and see them and have a conversation. And she said, please don't give me any more clients, because they would keep feeding her new clients. She said, I'm absolutely full. And if you bear in mind, she's delivering an hour session, 42 hours. She's also got to design 14 unique sessions. This was not the kind of trainer that dished out the same old cookie cutter session for each and every one. No, she used to write a bespoke training program for each of these clients. And so the manager said, yes, okay, I totally understand. And then it was less than a week later, he came to her and he said, oh, Sarah, I just wondered if you could do, I know you're fully booked, but I've just got this one client, and the thing is, you're the best person for her. I can't really give her to anyone else. I just wondered if there's any way you could possibly just squeeze her in. Sarah tried to say everything she could with her words, but I can tell you now, the way she relayed this story to me, her body language told me everything. She was reliving those emotions. And he did not see it, or he chose not to see it. And she agreed to taking on this client. And that was a short-term fix to his problem, which was, who would he give this client to? But unfortunately, what this actually meant was that within a couple of weeks, Sarah left. She couldn't cope. And so now the manager was left with having to recruit not just a member of team, a loyal member of team that went above and beyond, that really cared about all of her clients. They had to go through the cost of recruitment. Then they would have to retrain this person to get them up to the standard that they wanted. But not only that, she took 38 of her clients with her. That's why I got 38 wrong earlier. 38 of her clients. So that's 38 new members now that the club needed to market to get. And we all know it's far cheaper to retain your clients than it is to market to get new ones. We all know it's cheaper to retain your staff than it is to recruit new ones. And that also goes further, doesn't it? Because those clients, that means 38 people not giving referrals, 38 people not giving repeat business. It's revenue, revenue, revenue. An expensive, costly mistake for a short-term fix. The quiet quitter. Whew, these are expensive. These are expensive on your culture, because what they do is they drain your business from within. The quiet quitter is the one that's emotionally checked out and they're doing the very bare minimal. They're not delivering a training session that delivers above and beyond. And there is no way that they're making bespoke training experiences. I know they're churning out rep sets, volumes. Yeah, cookie cutter approaches, the same one size fits all for every single client. They're not delivering an experience that clients are going to rave about. So goodbye repeat business, goodbye referrals, costing you bang. And not only that, they're costing you because other members of the team might feel that they're having to pick up the slack, and that's not fair. So you need to stop that domino effect. This is Steph. And she's someone that I work with in the US, and she has a company called Move Your Mountain Fitness. But she used to work at a big chain company. Similar story to Sarah. She didn't feel valued. She didn't feel like she had a voice when she would go to meetings. And so she left and she set up her own boutique gym. And she decided then, right, I'm going to have a strong niche market, boomers. And she wanted to make sure that she had a team that shared that same passion of getting boomers moving without fear. She wanted to help reduce the risks of injury. So she was really careful in her recruitment process, making sure that these were people that wanted to be part of her team. What she would do is invite them to come along to the studio and be part of classes for at least 21 days to see how they performed, how they got on with the rest of the team. And by that point, she would know whether they fitted in. But from there, she wanted to make sure that she continued to give them what they needed, whether that was the opportunity for more courses, whether it was a course on fall prevention, whether it was a new course on how to train someone who's going through diabetes or taking GLP-1s, that type of thing. She also gave them courses to make sure that they had the tools to actually learn how to read and evaluate research. She did that with the motor skill application specialist through Faster Health and Fitness. She also set up leadership courses, communication courses, but importantly, gave them the opportunity to feedback how they were feeling and come to her if they had any ideas. One of the ideas they came up with was a coffee and cake class where they would do 20 minutes of class and then 20 minutes of cake and coffee. As you can imagine, those classes were absolutely fully booked. So she really did think about the experience of both her client and her team, thinking about how the client felt when they walked through, making sure the temperature was right, the sound wasn't too loud for her boomers, all of that. But she really focused on doing what she could for her team. Now, her budget wasn't so big as a big chain gym, so she couldn't give big extrinsic rewards. And I would also say that extrinsic rewards aren't as inspirational as those intrinsic rewards. things that really show somebody cares. And that's something Steph was great at. Through lockdown, what she did is she ordered everybody a tea towel that was going to be doing classes and sessions, both the team and all her clients. But she actually got printed on these tea towels their favourite training piece of kit. And that small touch meant that she'd taken the time to think about what they liked. She also put together playlists for people with videos of training sessions they'd done, matching their favourite music to the favourite exercises, a little sort of show and tell of what their experience had been like with her at Move Your Mountain Fitness. So there were some of the things that I thought were really kind of cool. It isn't always about a big expensive trip away or anything like that, but just acknowledging openly when somebody has gone above and beyond, or when somebody's helped you out, making someone feel appreciated, and definitely not curbing someone's enthusiasm if they come up with an idea. Because otherwise, if they think they won't share something because if it doesn't work, they're going to be reprimanded for it. That really does destroy the culture from inside. Build on that growth mindset. So what we've really done is we've looked at the heart of getting into the center of experience with our training team, our team, and of course our clients. And I think if you take that into the 3-tier process, it will help you get a little bit deeper and a little bit more specific over what it is people want and why they want it. The other thing it does is remind us that it's not just about creating the experience for our clients, but if we really put our team at the heart, they're going to go above and beyond, and that's going to knock on fourfold to your clients, but not only to your clients' friends and family, because they're going to be raving about you. And that's going to go forward to local businesses. And then again, if they're happy, if they're engaged, if they're motivated, inspired, they're going to be out, maybe not at the pub, but they're going to be out talking about how good you made them feel, because that's how they're going to judge you as a boss, as a company. So use this whole process with your stakeholders as well. And that way, this whole session that we've done isn't just a one thing. It can actually be used in all of those different areas. And make sure at the bottom of our happy, engaged, adapt, retain, task, success, the 3-tier face-to-face. And for me, that's something that we can't let go of. If we let that slip away and it all goes into unseen technology and tracking, we're going to miss those magical emotional connections. The last convention you went to, it wasn't always the session you were in, but it was in the queue when you were having a coffee and you saw someone, their face lit up, and you see that kinesthetic response. Get really good at communication, knowing that people tell you things not with their words, but with the change of breath that they had, the way they move in reaction to you, the way they space themselves towards you. All of those things will tell you how they're doing. Check in on that. I hope you've enjoyed today, but a quick reminder that it is not cheap to get a new member of team. £25,000 to £35,000 to replace a personal trainer. That's bang. And that comes from the 2025 UK Active Report. Incidentally, if you do want any of these reports, please just feel free to email me. Remember, not all feelings are valued the same. And as long as you're structuring that experience, you'll consistently be able to improve on it. But I want you to think about, before we go, the dog's leaving the room, the last concert you went to. Mine was Madness. And I can't really remember what happened in the middle. The beginning, baggy trousers. Loved it. Fantastic. But the end one, I really wanted something to happen. And if it didn't, I would have been really, really disappointed. But on this occasion, I was really thrilled. They sang Our House in the Middle of a Street, Our House. Can't remember what was in the middle of that concert, but I do know that if they hadn't have sung Our House in the Middle of the Street, I would have gone away disappointed. So think about those lasting impressions, that last part of the training experience, that last part of leaving your facility. See you later, Dave. Nice work in the session there on your PB, whatever it is, with your team. Make sure that that acknowledgement of have a nice weekend, or saying, oh, how was the Madness concert you went to? That will make them feel that little bit more special. Thank you so much for your time and staying with me. This hour, our time is done. Hopefully I'll be coming back soon and looking forward to sharing the myths and facts around training women through different stages of life. Now, if you would like any more information on how you can add some leadership training in with your team, or some communication training with your team, or perhaps it's even upskilling your personal trainers through motor skill application specialist or some of the other courses that I work with, please don't hesitate. Drop me an email, even if it's just to have a half an hour little chat about some of these areas that we've talked about today. And I would really love it. It would mean the world to me if you emailed me anything that was exciting that came up when you put these into practice, or anything that you would like to add. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.